What's up, gangsters? It's a fine winter day out here in Rube Goldberg land. Cold as all get out, but at least the sun is out, so that's a good thing. And it is time for a video of a type that I haven't done for a while, which is part one of the usual two-part build review thing that I like to do. I haven't done one of these in a while because I haven't started a new kit in quite a while, and it feels good. I've actually got 3 other projects on the go right now, one of which is a lot of fun, but it's a commission project and I can basically take as long as I want on it. The other 2, one of them is not fun at all. It's just an ass whipping. The other one is a long-term project that's a lot of fun, but it's really intense. And I decided a few weeks back that I just really needed a break from all that action and that I wanted to do something that was just pure fun. And I have found out that one of the most pure fun things that I've done in model building is Machine & Krieger kits. If you've checked out any of my nonsense before, you know that I've built a couple of the Machine & Krieger Falca vehicles. They're the kind of anti-gravity powered gunship type things. I built one as a kind of a Le Mans racer style in a shiny red, and then I built one in the pure military style. Year before last, it actually appeared in Tamiya Model magazine not too long ago, so that was pretty cool. But anyway, I love Machine & Krieger. I think they are super cool. Now, you are asking, what the hell is a Machine & Krieger? So, for those of you who aren't familiar, let me give you just kind of the quick summary. Machine & Krieger is a genre or series, or whatever you want to call it, of kits that were originated by an industrial designer in Japan named Kao Yokoyama. And Kao Yokoyama is a super creative dude, and his kits were super cool. They weren't really part of like a story or a game or anything, at least not in the same sense that like Gundam or Warhammer 40K or Star Wars or any of that stuff were. There were some comics, and somebody just told me today, actually, that there was actually one whole episode of a Machine & Krieger TV series. So I think maybe they tried, but it never really took in that respect. But they did turn into a thing with Japanese model builders, almost like a cult thing. The Kao Yokoyama group on Facebook has like 10,000 members in it, and it's really still very popular now 20 or 30 years later, because a couple of different companies actually licensed his designs and turned them into actual kits. The Falca and the Griffin that I built are done by Hasegawa, and the one that I'm going to show you today is built by a company called Wave Corporation. And I'm not totally clear on the availability and the history of stuff from Wave. Another company that did some was called Nitto, N-I-T-T-O. Same thing with those, still not totally sure. These are not the kind of things that you just find at any old hobby shop. I've done pretty well by ordering them actually off of Amazon, but they've come from Japan. However, in this case, and this case being, this is the Machine & Krieger Krote, which, as you can see, is a stompy robot gun thingy. And this one was given to me as a gift, which was very cool, by a guy named Vin Po, who is also a member of Scale Modelers Critique Group, and he does some stuff with, I think he has a line of tools and things that he sells from Hong Kong. Anyway, he's a really cool guy. And he just decided to send me this thing a couple of years ago with some stuff that I ordered from him, which was very cool. I think this kit was actually signed. If you look down there in the corner, I think that is actually signed by Yokoyama-san himself. So that's pretty cool. But I can't tell you how much this thing is supposed to cost or where to get one. I'll have that figured out by the time I do part 2. Anyway, that's the deal. I have been having a lot of fun building this thing, and I'm about to show you where I'm at with it. Let's check it out. All right, as usual, let me start with the instructions. Just take a quick look at those. These are really pretty straightforward. I really love the style that these guys do their instructions. They're similar, even though these kits are made by different companies. You kind of get the same presentation throughout all of them. Now this one is all in Japanese, so other than Maschinen Krieger Krote, and some other sort of German sounding stuff. These things were not meant to be like German war machines of the future. I just think he sort of adopted this sort of German nomenclature because it sounded cool. But don't make any mistake about these things being some sort of future Nazi war machine paraphernalia, because they are not. Nothing to do with that. But anyway, this is the Krote Panzer Aufklärungs TW47, or however you say that. Anyhow, you can see all in Japanese, but the instructions are really pretty easy to understand regardless of whether or not you speak the language. They are well laid out. They give you good views, complete with smeared super glue on them. That's my fault, of how everything goes together. And so you don't even have to be able to interpret any of that stuff to really be able to follow it. There are a couple of places where, yeah, it would help to be able to understand it, but I suppose if I'd really been dedicated, I could have gone after, taken some pictures and done Google Translate or whatever. But it's just places where they, give you some auxiliary instructions, like you can see there that if you want to install an LED light bulb in that light, that you can do that. But for the most part, it's all pretty straightforward. So you can see not even a lot of steps. The kit, I don't know how many total parts it has. I didn't notice anywhere on the box that it said that, but it can't be more than 100. It's pretty straightforward, pretty simple. And because it's supposed to be represented in 1/20th scale, you'll find that most of the parts are pretty big and beefy and easy to work with, and that just, makes it its own kind of fun. So anyway, that's the instructions. And you also get this sort of color call-out card, which is neat because it gives you some really beautifully illustrated views of the thing with some different color schemes. And you can see, camouflage in a couple of different variations. Looks pretty cool. I think I'm going to do something similar, but I'm going to just go totally off on my own, because that's the deal with these things that for me makes them fun, is it's total creative freedom. Nobody can say, well, that unit did not wear those particular markings in that particular location, because, hey, it's science fiction. So it's all good. Do whatever the heck you want to do. At any rate, they give you a nice layout of how to apply all of the decals, and those are included right here, and they are pretty nice. It's a pretty nice set of markings. Lots of little information stencils, placards, bunch of numbers. The number 19, which I'm obviously super stoked about, given that I love the number 19. You may have noticed that in some of my stuff. There's reasons for that, but at any rate, I'm stoked to have it, even though I probably will not use these, because I'm probably going to get some masks and spray all of the big markings. But anyway, these are good decals. In my experience, I don't know if these will be the same. I don't know who prints these, but the ones in my other Maschinen Krieger kits have been pretty thick and difficult to get to settle down. But, nothing that a little bit of Solvaset wouldn't take care of. So anyway, with that, let's take a look at some of the actual parts. Now, normally when I do one of these two-part review build things, when I'm at this point for part one, I've only done maybe 20% of the kit. And so that's enough to tell me kind of how things are going to go. And I have lots of things to show you still on the sprues. But as you can see, I have built most of the Stompy robot. So he's more like 90% done. And so I don't have a lot of stuff to show you that's still on the sprues, but there's enough to give you a little bit of an idea here of the molding quality and kind of what you can expect. It's nice, clean molding for the most part. You will find a few places with these where there are mold half mismatches, that you kind of have to deal with a little bit of filing and sanding maybe. Some places where the shapes are a little bit soft. But for the most part, my experience with these things has been that they are very crisply molded and that the detail is good. I mean, that'll give you an idea right there. You can see with that sort of coil spring looking thing or whatever it is, you can see like where those numbers are molded onto the sprue. That's pretty typical of the level of definition that you will see in these things. I mean, those pieces that have the bolts, come on, focus up there. Those bolts that are molded into those, you can see really nice and crisp. So that's good. And it should be, at 1/20th scale. You definitely should expect that. It's nice here because they've even given you a bunch of little bolt heads that you can add in either the recommended spots or wherever you decide on your own. At any rate, you get, I think, maybe a half dozen sprues for this thing. Like I said, it's a pretty simple, straightforward kit. You also get a figure, and being 1/20th scale, obviously pretty big. And I've painted one of these 1/20th scale Machine & Krieger figures before, and they're fun because they are so big, and it makes it relatively easy. But the detail is not the most awesome. I mean, they're okay. But if you really want to get serious about figures for your Machine & Krieger stuff, there are a number of aftermarket companies that make figures that are really good and come in a lot of interesting and cool poses and shapes. But, that kind of gives you an idea right there of the quality with the face there. So, not too bad if you choose to use those. I generally don't. This particular guy is not going to get used, I don't think. So, I don't know. I'll keep him around just in case. Anyway, what else you get in the kit is a photo etch that has one single piece on it, which I've already detached and test fit, but it's right here. I also have shaped it. It's just this little brass antenna looking thing. You also get a bag of wire and some springs, and I'll show you the springs in a minute. But the wire you get is this copper wire, which is so that if you choose not to use the plastic molded pieces, which are on the sprues, and this is an example of one of them, that you can use that nice copper wire. It looks better and is not as much of a hassle to clean up because you don't have to cut off all the little sprue nubs. So that copper wire is really good. They give you plenty of it. I didn't even come close to using it all. They also give you this wire, which is really nice. This is copper wire as well, but with an insulator jacket on it, and it's nice because it's easy to bend and form, and it retains its shape. It's not a springy wire, so this is good for some of the hoses and things like that you need. So it's pretty cool because they give you everything you need in the kit to either make it kind of basic, straight up. Like, let me show you an example. The thing has some shock absorber type gizmos on the legs, and they give you some completely molded ones that you can see here in this dish right here. I mean, these are not horrible, but they're not, they're not great either. They're well molded, but that's trying to replicate a coil spring that you can't undercut. So, from this direction, it looks okay, but as soon as you turn, it doesn't look quite as good. And there's some ejector pin marks on the sides of these and so forth. So you get those, but they also give you some coil springs and some parts that let you build a better set of shock absorbers, if that is in fact what they are. And I'll show you those here in a second. But it's just really cool because you get everything you need to kind of, be as intense about that as you want to. And then where the real fun comes in for me anyway is in going beyond that and adding levels of detail all of your own. And that really, to me, is kind of the true spirit of building Machine & Krieger, because that's what Kal Yokoyama was all about to begin with. He created these things just, from scratch and from found items like juice bottles and, whatever he could locate that would do the trick. And so I feel like that, carrying on with that and adding your own, doing your own kit bashing and adding your own detail parts is just really, kind of carrying on with that creative spirit. And to me, it's just a lot of fun because you can just do whatever you want to do. And once I kind of get in the groove with these things and kind of have a feel for, the look that I want, it just kind of becomes a flow. And it's a lot of fun. But I will start with the top. The top turret here, you can see, goes together pretty well. The main thing is actually 4 pieces. And there's actually a pretty bad joint between the side pieces and the top pieces that runs across the top here that you have to take care of. But once you've got that smoothed down, it's no big deal. And I wanted to replicate a sort of cast texture like you might find on a Russian tank or something like that. And so what I did to replicate that is I used Mr. Surfacer 500 that I applied with a sponge and then sanded flat the next day once it was nice and dry. And hopefully that's going to end up looking good. I also wanted cast texture on this lower portion underneath here, but I wanted it to be a little bit different. And I don't know if you'll be able to see it or not, but for that I just basically flooded the surface of the plastic with Tamiya Extra Thin and then just started pounding on it with this stiff brush that I use sometimes for chipping that is called a Deerfoot Stippler. And you can see that thing is nice. It's pretty stiff and it does a good job of leaving a kind of a grainy sort of texture that you just really probably can't see, but it's on all of these middle parts except for this one cylindrical thing in the that goes between the legs. Anyhow, so once I had all that done, then I just started drilling and adding resin bolts. And what I like for these bolts is you can see some there. Those are from Master Club. And Master Club makes a number of different things, but these resin bolts are one of my absolute favorites. I have a whole collection of them, and I'll show you kind of what I mean, and you will be super jelly when I show you this because I have this card that I got, and I get this stuff from Matt Bowl at Hobby World USA if you're in the United States or Canada. Actually, he'll ship all over the world. But anyway, you can see this is what they have as sort of a Master Club reference card. And you can see all of this hardware, all these sizes of things that they offer. So you can figure out what you want and how big it's going to be before you order it. Because this kind of stuff is difficult to, understand and pick correctly when you're just looking at it online. But what you get are these little bags of hardware. So you get like 100 pieces in there. And look at the little tiny bolts. And these are awesome. You can see I have these little bags marked with the hex size and the drill size that you need. So you just pop a hole, insert the thing, and then just wick a little bit of extra thin super glue around it to lock it in place, and bam, lots of very nice high value surface detail added to that thing. Now, since we're looking at that picture, what is the orange light? Well, that is the turn signal from a Honda Tamiya 1/6 scale Honda Monkey, which is a little motorcycle. And I just thought it would be kind of cool for this robot to have a safety beacon on top, and so there's the orange light. I replaced the shaft of this headlight actuator with a brass tube because that looked better. I drilled that out so it would look a little bit more realistic there. Same thing with this piece that goes across the front underneath the light there. You can see they give you that piece molded in, but I want it to look a little more realistic. I don't even know what it's for, but it looks kind of cool. And so what I did is I drilled out the blocks, put in a piece of that copper wire, and then added some bolt heads as if they're like lock, bolts. You can see when you look inside the front there where that vision camera, whatever it is, gizmo is, that there's a lot of white plastic there. That's all evergreen that I use to fill in open spaces. That one part's kind of disappointing because it is almost totally open behind that front piece, and it shows, and to me it just doesn't look like anything real. So I worked on that for a bit. Pretty happy with that. If you look, you can also see behind there some white evergreen plastic card and some places where I've filled in with Aves epoxy sculpt. The insides of the shell right here are just hollow, and that also did not look right. And so if you look carefully inside there, you can see behind the gun that I filled that in with plastic card as well, so that it wouldn't just be an empty looking shell type thing. And you can see some more of that right there. So I'm pretty stoked about that. You can see also where the copper wire comes in handy for these grab handles or brush guards or whatever the heck they are. I don't know, but that looks a lot better than the plastic parts. And more importantly, for my clumsy ass, they're a lot sturdier, and I'm not as likely to snap them off while I'm doing all of my work. So you can see I added some detail parts and left a few parts off, and just trying to get basically a more detailed and visually interesting kind of thing going on. Some parts from an AFV Club Matador there. Some parts from a Tamiya kit, another Tamiya kit. That black thing that looks like a neat looking cargo case or tool case or whatever. That is actually the tool case from the 1/6 Honda Monkey with a handle on it from the AFV Club Matador. Used some more bolt heads down there, made a little air cleaner looking thing. This is kind of supposed to be some kind of a motor. So, just some good detail going on in there. Now, these are the shocks that I was talking about before. You can see that nice coil spring. That has just a much higher level of realism right there. Lots better than those molded parts. And the other thing that I did that I'm pretty stoked about, if you look at the cylinders and the shock shaft here, you can see that those look like real metal, and that is because they are. I'm a firm believer that there's no substitute for real metal if you can figure out how to incorporate it. And one of my favorite things to use for that is hypodermic tubing. It's stainless steel, 304, 316. They have both grades. The 304 seems to be a little cheaper, and it's plenty good enough. And you can put it in your motor tool, like your Proxxon or your Dremel, spin it up, hit it with a sanding stick, and you get that nice polished look that is exactly like what a real hydraulic cylinder shaft looks like. So I'm pretty stoked about that. I think that really really adds another level of realism to it. You can also see down there, there's some hoses that wrap around the legs and, get on the back of the feet there. Now, this is a point where some of you guys who are familiar with these things or who are particularly sharp-eyed are saying, wait a minute, Pattison, there's some shenanigans going on here. Something is not quite right. And technically, you are correct, because when you look at this picture, what's different? Yep, technically, my legs are on backwards. Yeah, you can see that in the original kit design, the Stompy robot is much less stompy than he is sort of shuffly, because he's dragging that long foot behind him. And there's actually a video that somebody made on YouTube of an animation showing these things walking with their legs on there this way. And I don't really think that it's very realistic in the way that they depicted the motion, but either way, it's just not very efficient. And this thing, as I found out with lots of workbench face plants, is pretty front heavy. And but I don't know, it just doesn't balance very well with the legs on there like that, as from what I can see. So all that being said, I sort of feel like that this really would be the more engineering correct way for the legs to go on. Now, I'm sure there are going to be people who will disagree with me and who will say, oh, but that's not the way it's supposed to be done. You've defied the canon and blah, 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 and this is heresy. Well, yeah. Anybody who knows me knows I don't care. I am going to do what I like, and I like this better. I think that not only is it more technically or technologically correct, but I just think it looks a lot better this way. So, yeah, my legs are on backwards. Disqualify me. Whatever. That's my story. I'm sticking to it. At any rate, I think that is about it. That's about all I can really say at this point. I'm getting ready to start painting. I have maybe a tiny bit more detail work to do, but this thing is about ready to go to the paint shop and get some primer on it. And I'm really looking forward to this. I think that the painting and the weathering is going to be a lot of fun. So that's where we will pick up with part 2. Okay, so there you go. Hopefully you guys think that's as cool as I think it is. These things are just a lot of fun, and it's a great refresher for me when I'm just feeling like I pretty much always have fun, even though I'm constantly whining and bitching about this or that or the other with these projects. The truth is I'm pretty much always having some level of fun, or I just wouldn't be doing it. But yeah, it does get to be stressful at times, and this sort of thing for me is just really a nice breath of fresh air, because it's fun. They're fun to put together, and I have a lot of fun adding the detail, and then when it gets into the paint and weathering, that's the part that I'm really looking forward to. And I just realized with the other projects that I'm working on that none of the 3 of them are going to be anywhere near paint and weathering anytime soon. In fact, 2 of them aren't going to get any weathering at all, so no happiness there. So I needed something that was going to get me into my happy place sooner than later, and this was the perfect solution. So I think it's going to be, I think this next part is going to be a lot of good fun. And I like this because it gives you all of the weathering and painting opportunity that something like a silly tank does. And you don't have to actually try and pretend to care about a silly tank, which I don't. I'm sure I'll build some tanks at some point, but I really have very little interest in them right now. So I think this is cool because it gives you that whole military stylization, whatever the hell you want to call it. Gives you all of that in a science fiction package that gives you total creative freedom with all of the same weathering opportunities. So yeah, good fun. You should go get yourself one of these. Build one. They're cool. All right, guys. As always, I appreciate you watching. Take care. Much love.